We worry about the things that we can't do, that we're out of control. If we can make you worry less, if we can reduce that and get on top of these things and feel a bit in control, then guess what? You're going to be a better photographer because you're going to be more focused on the thing that you really enjoy. Helping someone is actually finding out what actually needs helping as opposed to what they tell me needs helping. Again, it's the human nature because we want the quick fix. If it's something we don't enjoy, we want to get rid of it and get it out of our way as quickly as possible. And I guess for me, it's seeking out that little spark, seeking out what makes them unique. And that's part of their brilliance in terms of, right, let's run with that. Let's make more of this. Stop trying to be like everybody else.
Du hörst Teach. Vom didaktischen Konzept zum konkreten Verhalten vor der Klasse. Der Podcast rund um das psychologische Handwerkszeug für deinen erfüllenden Alltag als Lehrer. Mit Christian Kressmann.
Putting back the fun in the fundamentals of business could be the heading of this episode, but as this podcast is for teachers, this episode is going to be putting the fun back in the fundamentals of teaching, and the emphasis is on fun. And for that, I'm really thrilled and delighted to interview Paul Inskip with that. He is a photography teacher and a coach for photographers and a business owner. And yeah, as said, he helps business owners to emphasize the joy and the playfulness in business. I thought it might be a good idea to talk about that topic for teaching, because I don't have to tell you that, but teaching is challenging. To worry less and be brilliant when teaching is a few things that we'd like to emphasize here. And these are two of the three topics or pillars that Paul addresses. His clients name him as, you have a huge wealth of knowledge and are so generous with it. Even before we became customers, you would share so much. You're also a great crack. And he really loves using metaphors in his teachings, which connect with me. So I'm just thrilled and excited. Besides his two podcasts, which I recently had the chance to speak on, which has the title, The Annoyingly Optimistic Show, which is, fun in itself. So I'm just thrilled to have him here and to talk about how to make things fun again in the teaching field, transferred from the business aspect of life. Paul, I'm really thrilled and glad that you're here and we could chat about this certain topic. Thanks for being in the show.
No, thank you very much for asking me. It's fun to be here.
Before we started the talk, you named some checkpoints you crossed off in your recent journey or in your journey as a company owner and in your creative journey. You started with media management, then went to music producing, then graphic design, and then eventually fell into the Photographic Association, and then happened to have a photography business. But realized, I rather like teaching people instead of doing the photos itself and teaching them about how to make money or how to run their businesses in a fun way. I know this only scratches the surface of your history, of your biography, but the pattern we can derive from that is that you are a creative person. And if you have the time to check out his website, you really know why, because it all is fun and matching and the colors are bright and shiny. And the point here, which I'm trying to get to, is why? Why fun? Why is it your focus in business?
I think it was a discovery for me. I had always latched on to the creative side and thought I was artistic and with the graphic design and the music. And I think a realization that, yes, I've got that creativity, but actually when I boiled it down, the creativity was about inventive coming up with things. The design was taking a blank sheet of paper and coming up with a logo. It was the process of creation and problem solving for someone. Someone needed something designed, I could design it. That I realized was something that I get a lot of joy out of, that kind of creativity. In one of my businesses at one point, I think I had 9 different logos for different sub things in my business. I couldn't stop. It was something that I enjoyed. I think realizing that comes very easy to me. Someone says they've got a problem, my brain jumps into life with half a dozen different solutions. People often, when I'm coaching them and speaking, they kind of go, I wouldn't like to spend more than a few minutes in your head. It's just the things that you come up with. And so I realized that was the creativity. It was the problem solving, and it was letting myself not be just someone that answered problems. It was the enthusiasm with which I do it, and the enjoyment I get out of it, which gets people excited. It was working with various other creatives, and particularly in the photography side, where they have a passion. Bit like with teachers, I've known and got friends who are teachers. They have a passion for that, and photographers and creatives have a passion for doing the thing they really want to do. But from a business side of it, it's everything else that comes with it that they don't want to be, they don't want to do. And there's a book actually called The E-Myth, which when I read that, it was a big light bulb moment in realizing that as the technician, they could have the skill, but they didn't have the other things. And that's where they were the bits that I love doing. It was joining those two things together. But at that point, I was missing the spark. I was missing the thing that made it unique. And that was where the fun came in. Because ultimately, when they were struggling to do the business side of it, struggling to know what to do next, struggling to really kind of get their dream off the ground and do that manifests in worry. We worry about the things that we can't do, that we're out of control. Yeah, we might fix your website. That might be what we end up doing. But it's if we can make you worry less, if we can reduce that and get on top of these things and feel a bit in control, then guess what? You're going to be a better photographer, because you're going to be more focused on the thing that you really enjoy. Once I focused on removing the worry, fun just became the easy way to kind of do that, because it's not something that they have to, worry about. We can do that. So yeah, and it just allowed me to be me, as you said, from my website. As a photographer, I was very bright and bold, and bold colors. When I had my studio, my high street studio, I had a 60-foot corridor from the front to the back. There's it used to be a program in the UK, kids program called Mr. Tumble. And he was bright and colorful and stuff like that. And down the 60-foot corridor, I had great big primary colored dots. And every time people came in, they went, it's like Mr. Tumble's house. And it's like, brilliant. That's exactly what I want. And that's really carried on. It's embracing that, I'm going to give you great piece of information, great help, great advice, but I'm going to do it with a smile and having fun with it.
And I think that is a point that really teachers can relate to, that giving great advice, but with ease, with smile, with light-hearted ways of doing so. Why I really enjoyed you being in the show is because it is such a burden for lots of teachers to do their job, because of all the things they also have to take care of besides the core business. And I think this is a similarity for photographers as well, because they're not worrying about taking photos, but worrying about how to run a business, how to write emails on time, how to schedule appointments, how to build websites and all that. So it is all the administrative stuff besides the core business that is causing troubles. This is why I really like to know more about your approach. How do you do that? How do you achieve that less worrying?
The interesting thing, I set out initially with what I thought was the way of doing it. And I got wonderfully proved wrong in many ways, which is a good experiment. But some of it did kind of stick. And it was, use this term of shiny things, because we often get attracted to, read this article, I need a better website, or I need in the photographers, I need a better camera or a new lens or better light, or I need this bit of software. We get attracted by things, and it's against the human nature because we want the quick fix. If it's something we don't enjoy, we want to get rid of it and get it out of our way as quickly as possible. So if we can see a magic bullet, a magic button to press or something, that's what's attracted people. So I set out initially with making those some of the big things that were pulling people in terms of, oh, do you realize you need a new website? Okay, we can help you with that. What I knew at the time, but not to the degree, was that is the thing that might attract them in. But what I spend the most amount of my time doing, and it was seeing it over and over again. The first few times you think, oh, I've just uniquely found people that have got the problem in this way. And then when it just happens over and over again. And so for me, it's that big thing. As soon as they admit that there's something they can't do, that they need help, that they've got these worries, as soon as they can admit that, then I can help them. Is we just break it down. I get them to do all kinds of questions and exercises. I get them to record their own time. We go through how they manage their time and things like that. I get them to do lists of the jobs that they love, the jobs that they like, and the jobs that they hate. Because what I found is that I have to get right down to what's actually the biggest thing holding them back, because it is never the shiny thing. It's never the thing that they thought was the biggest problem. And so it's breaking right that down. And again, it's getting down to the root of the worry, the thing that they're most afraid to tackle and that they don't want to admit potentially to themselves. Because only once I get to that and we start working on that, and I've had clients that have now been with me for 3 years. And I would always start with, I've got them here, notebooks where I'd write on the front cover. I'd send them a notebook and I'd write on the front cover what we were planning to tackle. And I've got one client in particular, we're 3 years into working together. Yeah, we still haven't done the first thing on the list. We've done lots of other things. It's that discovery that no, there's other things will give you a bigger benefit, but also causing you the real kind of core of that worry. And so it's uncovering that. Helping someone is actually finding out what actually needs helping as opposed to what they tell me needs helping.
What do you think is the biggest challenge or the biggest common challenge that all photographers share?
It probably comes down to time, because so much of the things, the business side of it, that they don't know what to do, where to do, how to do it, and things like that. So they become busy fools. I'm working 60 hours. And I go through them and go, okay, how many shoots do you do? How much time do you spend actually taking the photos? How much time do you spend showing people the photos? And we do all that and go, okay, that's 15 hours. What do you do with the other 45 hours? And they go, I don't know. And they turn up every day and they sit in front of their computer and they go to work and, but they're not using that time because they don't know what they should be doing. So they're just trying to do everything. They're trying to be on social media all the time. They're trying to find these quick fixes to solve these kind of problems. And so it's time is often the big one. But again, that's no one ever says, oh, I've got a problem with time. It's not something that people typically seek to fix, and that's why it's always one that gets tackled, but it's not the one that people actually present with, as it were, or kind of say, this is something I'm stuck on, because it's, I just need to, I'll get a better to-do list, or I'll take half a day off or something, because it's seen as, oh, it's not a problem. But there was one person I spoke to during lockdown, and I did kind of a chat with them, an exploratory chat. And we literally found, I think it was 16 hours, 2 days a week, where they could not account for what they do. They had no idea what they were doing in that time. And it's like, well, let's not worry about your prices or your website or whatever, because if we can unlock that 2 days, you're going to do everything better, because even if that's unlocking those for 2 days off, if that's what your business really needs, then that's going to be, phenomenal. So it's unlocking time is probably the biggest thing that we unlock.
And I think that is a great similarity for teachers, the lack of sufficient time, or they don't have sufficient time to do all their necessary works. And it is a thing that I do in my coaching program as well, to help them to just, find out, where is the time going? Where does it fly when you keep on working? Is it easy for your clients to admit it?
Once we start on that, then yes, because we're very good, and probably teachers are the same, business people, and I think human beings, we're very good at justifying our decisions, justifying the things we do, explaining them, giving ourselves excuses. But as soon as you open up to someone else looking at that and kind of going, this is something that can be fixed, I think it's just that realization that, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense when you hear somebody else saying it, as opposed to your own kind of internal dialogue. And it can very quickly, I mean, one of the exercises I do, and I tell them after about 6 weeks, I get them to download an app on their computer, and I get them to basically clock in and out when they're doing various jobs. They keep these records, and after a couple of weeks, they're going, will we go through this in? Yeah, yeah. And after 6 weeks, they go, we haven't looked at it. I said, no, we never will. But the pure mechanism of making you clock your time, I said, you're already working more efficient because you're conscious of that I might be checking up on this, and it's those kind of things. And once they start seeing those, then that immediately that trust is there, because they realize, yeah, this is actually making not the difference I thought, but it's making the difference that I need. And that's the big, kind of mental change.
And that is a nice trick. Time tracking for teachers now sparks some ideas in my mind how that can be applied in my niche. So thank you for this one. But on the other hand, we're not talking about the make more money aspect, because, well, it is not a thing for teachers because they get paid. But I really would love to dive deeper about the be brilliant aspect of your business. What do you mean by that?
For me, it's two sides of the same coin. Having been a professional photographer with a high street studio, with staff, there is a performance. And I think it's the same with anything that, teaching certainly is a performance, as I call it, because as a photographer, you're sitting in the office and it doesn't matter whether you've had a bad day or whatever, but when the door goes and the customer comes in, I have to bring the energy. I have to keep that going all through that. Even if it's something that you love and enjoy, that takes actual energy, and you need those reserves. And when everything else starts weighing you down and dragging you from the business side of it, but from all the things that are just distracting from that, it makes you a worse performer. It makes you a worse photographer. It makes you whatever that is, because that's sapping that much needed energy. So the idea about being brilliant, and I've met some amazing photographers, business owners, people who have got such a passion, and then they end up working in a supermarket or going back to a 9-to-5 job, not because they weren't amazing at what they do, but because they just couldn't handle the other side of it. And that's really what's kind of sparked me on over the years to kind of like, that shouldn't happen. Someone that's actually got something to give, something that they can actually really create something and make a difference for people, but they can't do that because they can't do the other bits. That's not right. The worry and the brilliance for me are the two sides of the same coin, because if you remove that worry, then you have more energy to be better at the thing that actually drives you and actually excites you. You can't just concentrate on, we'll just be better at it, just because you've constantly got this thing weighing you down. So you have to release that worry. The brilliant side of it really, kind of grow and be the dominant side.
What have been the most striking examples of your client work so far, where you could make the biggest difference in their lives to reduce the most annoying stress or points, and then you really could see them shining?
There's one in particular that I'd been working with them for a little while. They'd been in business for 9 years, I think it was at this point, as something before they were a photographer. And they thought it was their website or whatever. And we got into it. We got a lot of the time things sorted. I love asking people how many emails are in their inbox, because that always makes them go very, very quiet. It's how many thousand they've got sitting there. We'd been working away, and we'd started rebranding. Because this was something that she had just been doing what everybody else had been doing and regurgitating that. And we went through this branding process, and we got to one point where we were just near the end of it, and we were on a call, and she just went really, really quiet. I thought maybe the doorbell had gone or something like that, being on a Zoom call. And she took a little while to kind of pull her thoughts together. And she started crying. And I went, what is it? And she said, this is the first time this feels like my business, and it was such a moment for her that she'd been in business for 9 years, but it was only now that she felt that, yeah, this is this is what I wanted to do. This is what I wanted to start, and that was something that no one seeks that, but it was that realization and that kind of, focus. And it's those kind of stories. It's never about the mechanics of it as such. There's another photographer who, again, was just doing the things that everyone else does, was in with everybody else, not doing anything kind of, but had this one thing. And she dropped it into a conversation of this particular style of photography where she has this box. It's a very kind of simple idea. And she photographs people in the box and turns that into a grid of 3x3 with the family members doing funny things in the boxes, firing Nerf bullets at each other, or, just the things that are unique to kind of their family. And she did this, I don't know, 1 in 20 shoots that she happened to kind of do it. And she, but I love this, and customers love it, and they talk about it. And it was just not that she asked for it, but it was almost that the discussion that led from that was me kind of giving her permission to kind of go, run with that. That is what is unique. That is what you need to be doing. Stop doing what everyone else is doing. They would love this idea if they had with it. And seeing the transformation. And again, for her, it was a monetary transformation as well, because in doing this, she went and over a course of an 18 months, she went from an average customer spending £350 to spending £750. She didn't get better. She didn't, move. She didn't do anything else other than have the confidence in what she was doing and doing something that was unique. The customers rewarded her by spending more money because she was doing something that they wanted more. And so it's those kind of transformations which people aren't seeking those. They would have, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with this. But by fixing those struggles, that's the thing that then happens, because a lot of it is little mechanical bits. We put a particular workflow in or a bit of software where I identified that, this will just make your life easier, And I guess for me, it's seeking out that little spark, seeking out what makes them unique. And that's part of their brilliance in terms of, right, let's run with that. Let's make more of this. Stop trying to be like everybody else and let that bit out. And that comes back to the worry, because they've never really let that out because they've had everything on their shoulder to worry about.
So if I get you right, and to translate it back to the teaching field, I would translate to really teach in your own unique style, but not do lessons like your colleagues do, or you found on the internet and they said, well, this is a great lesson, but you have a gut feeling that, yeah, this might okay, but I do it. But you don't enjoy doing that, and you don't feel the passion when doing so. When you focus on the aspects of how you teach, it will elevate your whole way of being a teacher, because you focus on your uniqueness. Is that correct to say, or?
100%, because I don't think anybody gets into teaching or running their own business because they've sat there one day and said, I want to be like every other teacher or every other business. They've got it because they've been inspired by someone else. They've been inspired to see what difference they can make by being a good teacher. But again, this is where I think the similarities between business and teaching come in, but then reality comes in, then the paperwork, the marking, and everything else that comes along, and you just want to do the bit you want to do. And so that's where I've suddenly spent all this time here, and that's taken my energy. I can't be that amazing teacher I wanted to be. I can't do that because I just need to do something. I've got to deliver that lesson next week or whatever. So again, it comes down to that time and that energy zapping, kind of worry. So yeah, I think it's 100% the same problem, completely different fields. But, you can't be your best photographer. You can't be the best teacher. It's not to deal with if you can't get the tools to basically deal with the other side of it. And I think that's what it's about. It's about that kind of tool set, really.
As I really feel that this is a relevant topic to me because I run a business, but I know for most teachers, the fun aspect could be more important. I was wondering if, no, that's a stupid question. I know the answer, all right, because I think you will say yes, of course. Your podcast, Annoyingly Optimistic Show. Is it worth checking out for teachers as well?
I would like to think so, on the basis that, yes, it's all dealing with business issues in terms of, it might be pricing, it might be kind of sales. The latest one was on creating a website. None of these things that teachers are doing. But if it gave someone an idea in terms of, because everything is based on be more or be less. There are some eventually come out with stop at the beginning, but I'm doing the be more, be less, because it's not absolutes. It's just being more of something, less of something. But I try and take an idea, and my son even got into it the other day in the kitchen. He was coming up with you could be this, and he was just, and this is where my brain works. He was just throwing more animals at me, because they tend to be kind of animals or amusing ones. And he was saying, be more giraffe. And I went, okay, how's that helpful? And he's 16. We went, well, giraffes pick the very top bits of the leaves, the bits that are really good, not the bits down the bottom. So they focus on those bits that they really want. I went, yeah, I could turn that into kind of a way of teaching or explaining something. And that's what it is for me. It's coming up with ideas, and they spark from conversations with people, and they say something, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And so I'm always on the lookout for how to take something that's complicated and make something that becomes memorable, becomes, a bit silly, a bit whimsy, but then someone remembers that. I did an hour-long webinar during lockdown all about branding, and all about how it's not just about the logo and fonts and colors and things like that. So not the most exciting subject, but talking about kind of creative things. And I put this together, and this wasn't a conscious thing, and I called it Stop Burning Cows. Basically, because I kicked off with the whole, where does branding come from? It comes from branding cows. That's where it started, and it's a logo, and it's more than that. But it was one of those things that people talked about it, and people came along to it because, what was this? And they still talk about it now, because it wasn't what they were expecting, and it challenged that, and they remembered it. So so I think that fun aspect is just my way of there are the most amazing, people out there, and the knowledge, and there's very little new knowledge. Yes, there is, but it's always that kind of, how can I make this more accessible, and how can I make it, something that, if they remember it. And so if there's some things on the podcast which spark ideas, and I'd like to think there's someone that is does a lesson, stop burning cows, be more cake, which is another one, be more lamppost, which was the one that came out this week, which was, I got some interesting comments for, because that one, a lot of the other ones, people can half guess what it might be to do with. But that one, people are like, I have no idea what that's to be about. And it was to do with sales, and it was about being a guiding light, as opposed to a bright flashing neon, snazzy tricks. It's like helping people choose and guiding their way, so that's just my way of breaking down that kind of idea. So hopefully there might be some sparks of interest for teachers. And that's why, because I do this one twice a week, and all the episodes are under 10 minutes long, give or take, because they're just kind of little fun, kind of quirky ideas to kind of spark something, and if that can spark something in anybody, business or otherwise, then I feel like I've done my job. I've made someone smile. I mean, the name for the podcast, The Annoyingly Optimistic Show, came from my clients, because that's how they kept describing me. So it was like, I'm just going to run with that, because I can't think of anything better. But it sums it up from the music, and from the theme in it. It's designed to make you smile. It's designed to kind of lift you and just give you that little boost.
And I'm sure that the listener caught the underlying message here, to use metaphors in your teaching to explain complex topics in an easy and fun way. I think this could be a source of great metaphors to use in your teaching, to just check out the podcast. You really hit me with that Stop Burning the Cows headline for a lesson. And just to go with those kinds of headlines for courses, lesson plans, and all that, this is what it does with the students, or with your clients, of course, to go with the metaphors. And I'm a great fan of using those.
There's a link with a book, which again I read think it was the tail end of 2019, and there's 3 or 4 books when I'm speaking to businesses and speaking to people that are my kind of must reads, in terms of, because it doesn't matter what you do. I think there are certain books that just kind of resonate. And there's a book called Be More Pirate. This is about the golden age pirates. And it was interesting. It was only when someone threw it back to me just a few weeks ago and said, "Oh, all your be more and be less, is that from Be More Pirate?" And I went, "No, it wasn't." But I hadn't even put that kind of 2 and 2 together. And he was using pirates and what they actually achieved versus what people think, as the whole thing wasn't kind of a metaphor, but showing how by challenging things and stuff like that. And I think it probably was a massive kind of influence, because that was a mindset change in terms of not playing by the rules, and I think he says in there that, the number of rules which came out of what the pirates did. And also it's kind of like, every new rule was made up by someone breaking a previous one. It was someone trying something new. And I think those kind of things probably stuck in there, that kind of like, I don't have to just do what everyone else is doing. And if I can bring that excitement and that sticks in people's minds. And I think that's where the kind of the metaphor came from. And just playing around with those various other those of, I've got one coming out about, not using social media if you don't want, from a business side of it, because I'm old enough to remember life before social media, and then it still worked. And so basically it's not quite a metaphor, but it's be more antisocial, which is just going to check. Well, what are you saying? We have to be grumpy to run a business? No, it's a specific thing. But yeah, it's that curiosity, because if you can get people's minds racing with ideas when they don't know what it is, they're more receptive to those ideas, whatever those are. And I think that's what I like doing, is posing those questions and getting people thinking about things from a different viewpoint, because that's often what it needs. One of the things that I say to a lot of people, and I think this goes from anybody with that passion, it's the same with the teachers. You actually have all the answers you need. You actually have, the unique thing you can do, how to do these things, but it's unlocking it, because the number of times when I'm working with someone and they have these amazing moments, going back to a woman that cried with her branding, all I was doing was creating what she was essentially telling me. It was a big process to get there, but I wasn't making this up. I was just enabling her to see what I knew that she wanted, and so she had the answers. And that's one of those things that it is unlocking those things, as opposed to teaching people often. It's just giving them that spark and to look at it differently and realize that they know more and they've got more of the answers than they thought they had.
I really would love to continue our chat for quite some time, but I have one final and tough question for you.
Okay.
May I ask it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you would sum up what we have spoken so far about, if there's a take-home message, what would it be?
I guess, I'm struggling with the one, but I think the take-home for someone listening and who's dealing with these similar issues, even though it's not in business, they're dealing with the stresses and the complexities of what their job entails, which isn't the job that they love to do and they want to do. I think it's, as much as I would like to say, focus on getting the fun into it. The fun is hard to even realize unless you take away some of those other things. So I think it's really looking into the time that you take, the tools that you have, the way that you work, because if you can release some of that burden, if you can find better ways of doing it, more efficient ways of doing it, the fun stuff will naturally come, because you'll have more time, more energy, and more enthusiasm to do those. So I think it has to be kind of tackle some of those inner little niggly things that we can brush aside and things like that. One of the things that and there's a version of this that will work for teachers as well that I get with businesses. I said, write down anything that takes you more than 15 minutes. And there are various things that naturally take more than 15 minutes, but I just found it's one of those things that when people go through that process and writing those down, there's so many things in those little 15 minutes that actually, why are you doing it that way? If you did it this way, it'll take you 5 minutes. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, but if all of a sudden those start stacking up, that you can just find better ways to do them or get rid of things that you don't really need to do, and it's joining up those dots, because, the energy that we have to bring from a creative, from a teaching side, that doesn't come from external, it comes from us. And so if we can reduce that burden of time and that worry, then the brilliant side comes through, and that's why we do this. We want more of that. And so to get more of that, we just have to tackle some of the hard stuff.
That was unexpected, but really well received. Thank you so much for this practical insight. Thank you for being here and sharing some wisdom, some ideas, some creativity, some metaphors.
Thank you for having me. I hope it's been useful and made someone smile. That's what I like to think.